Hi everyone, welcome back to part 3 of The Brakeman's Daughter, another story by Damon Runyon from his book called On Broadway. And this bit is about the meeting with all the breweries. Well, there are delegates to the meeting from as far west as Chicago. And most of them seem to be greatly interested in Big False Face's proposition. Especially a delegate from South Chicago who keeps trying to introduce a resolution to sue the government for libel for speaking of brewers who supplied the nation with beer after Prohibition sets in as racket guys and wildcatters. Now, the reason for meeting lasts so long is partly because Big False Face keeps making motions for recesses so he can do a little entertaining. For if there is one thing Big Fat False Face loves, it is to entertain. But another reason is that not all the delegates are willing to join Big Fat False Faces Association, especially certain delegates who are operating in Pennsylvania. These delegates say it is nothing but a scheme on the part of Big Fat False Face to nab the business on them. And in fact, it seems that there is much resentment among these delegates against Big False Fat Face. And especially on part of a guy by the name of Cheeks Shiraki, who comes from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I wish to state that if there is one guy in the United States I will not care to have around resenting me, it's Cheeks Shiraki. For nobody knows how many guys Cheeks cools off in his time, and not even himself. But Big False Face does not seem to notice anybody resenting him. And he is putting on entertainment for the delegates right and left, including a nice steak dinner on the evening of the day I'm speaking of. And it is this dinner that I state to Big False Face that I hear he is taking the hummingbird out in society. Yeah, Big False Face says, I gotta take the hummingbird to call on the Brakeman's daughter. Well, when I hear this, I wish to say I am somewhat surprised, because the Brakeman's daughter is nothing but a practical joke. And furthermore, it is a practical joke that is only for rank suckers, and the hummingbird does not look like to be a sucker to me. In fact, when Big False Face speaks of the Brakeman's daughter, I take a gander at the hummingbird, figuring to see some expression on his kisser that will show he knows what the Brakeman's daughter is. But instead, the hummingbird is only looking, quite eager. And then I get to thinking about when he tells me in the afternoon about Big False Face taking him to see a doll who is daffy to meet him. And I can see the Big False Face is working on him with the Brakeman's daughter for some time. And I also get to thinking there's a lot smarter guys than the hummingbird will ever be, no matter how smart he gets, fall for the Brakeman's daughter's joke, including Big False Face himself. In fact, Big False Face falls for it in the spring of 1928 at Hot Springs, Arkansas. And ever since, it is his favorite joke. And it becomes part of the entertainment of all the visitors to Newark, New Jersey. Unless, of course, they happen to be visitors who are Jerry to the Brakeman's daughter into quite a well-known institution in Newark, New Jersey. And the way the Brakeman's daughter's joke goes is as follows. The idea is Big False Faces picks out some guy that he figures is a little dull dizzy. And the way Big False Face can wrap up a dull dizzy guy is really quite remarkable. Then he starts telling this guy about the Brakeman's daughter, who is the most beautiful doll that ever steps in shoe leather. To hear Big False Face tell it, in fact, I once hear Big False Face telling a sucker about how beautiful the Brakeman's daughter is, and I find myself to see her, although of course I know there is no such thing as the Brakeman's daughter. Furthermore, everybody around Big False Face starts putting in a boost for the Brakeman's daughter, stating at the sucker that she is so lovely the guys are apt to go silly just looking at her. But it seems that the Brakeman's daughter has a papa who is a brakeman in the Central, and who is the orneriest guy in the world when it comes to his daughter. and who will not let anybody get close enough to her to hand her a slice of fruitcake. In fact, this brakeman is so ornery, he will shoot you, certain if he catches you fooling around his daughter. The way Big False Face and the other citizens of Newark, New Jersey state the situation to the sucker, and everyone is afraid of the brakeman, including guys who are not supposed to be afraid of anything in this world. But it seems that Big False Face is acquainted with the brakeman's daughter, and who knows the nights the brakeman has to be out and on his runs. And on these nights, the brakeman's daughter is home alone, and on such a night, Big False Face occasionally calls on her, and sometimes takes a friend. But Big False Face and everybody else says that it is a dangerous proposition, because if the brakeman ever happens to come home unexpectedly and finds callers with the daughter, he is pretty sure to hurt somebody. Well, the chances are the sucker wishes to call on the brakeman's daughter no matter what, especially as Big False Face generally lets on that the brakeman's daughter sees the sucker somewhere and is very anxious to meet him, just as he lets on to the hummingbird. So finally, some night, Big Falsey takes the sucker to the house where the brakeman's daughter lives, making their approach to the house very roundabout and mysterious and sneaky. Then, the minute Big Falsey knocks on the door, out pops a guy from somewhere roaring at them in a large voice, and Big False Face yells that it is the brakeman's daughter's papa himself and starts running, telling the sucker to follow, although as a rule this is by no means necessary. And when the sucker starts running, he commences to hear shots, and naturally he figures that the old brakeman is popping at him with a Betsy. But what he really hears is incandescent light bulbs going off around him, and sometimes they hit him if the bulb thrower has a good control. Now, the house Big False Face generally uses is an old empty residence pretty well out in the suburb of Newark, New Jersey, and it sites away up by itself in a big yard near a piece of woods. And when he starts running, Big False Face always runs into these woods, and naturally the sucker follows him. And pretty soon Big False Face loses the sucker in the woods and doubles back and goes on downtown and leaves the sucker wandering around in the woods for maybe hours. Then when the sucker finally makes his way back to the hotel, he always finds many citizens gathered to give him the ha-ha and to make him buy refreshments for one and all, and the sucker tries to make out that he has greatly amused himself, although chances are he is so hot you can fry an egg on any part of him. The biggest laugh that the Big False Face ever gets out of the brakeman's daughter joke is the time he leaves a guy from Brooklyn by the name of Rocco Scarpati in the woods one cold winter's night, and Rocco never does find his way out and freezes as stiff as a stretched shirt. And of course Big False Face has quite a time explaining to Rocco's Brooklyn friends that Rocco is not cooled off by other means other than freezing. So it's a bit of a wind-up by the sound of it. It all seems to be in on the story. But we'll find out what happens to the hummingbird next. And I'll see you soon. If you like the story, give me a thumbs up. Be nice to see. See you soon. God bless. Bye-bye. Bye.